If you want to create another zone, and let's say we want to create a zone object for layer 2, let's go ahead and create just a meta node out of what we already made. And we can select the landscape, edit the material, go to layer 1, edit the density function, or really any function you can edit is going to take you to the exact same part of the function editor. And what I want to do is, in this case, I'm going to be removing the meta node. Just because I don't want a meta node within a meta node. It is possible, but I'd rather have the full objects and full connections within there. So I'm just going to recreate this really quick. And I've also could have just ungrouped the meta node, which would also give me the exact same setup, but a little more complex since that node has direction to input and output and will create a bunch of extra nodes. So what I'm going to do is select all of these nodes, create a meta node. We can go to Edit. And to make this a little bit easier, what we're going to do is publish the dependency, the size, position, the constant we have as our internal unit, and now we have a meta node we can use over, save out, reload, where we have the dependency of our object we can select, and then we can set the internal unit. And to expand on this a little bit further, we could set up the same operation and output for each axis. Or another thing you could do is take the tooth Gaussian and include it in the meta node. So I'm going to ungroup this really quick. And I want the entire setup this time, which includes the blender. So we'll select all of the nodes, including the blender, create meta node from selection, we can edit the object, and now everything is contained within here. What we're going to need to do is extract the position dependency, extract the size, and we can also extract the internal unit. And if you wanted to, you could publish the gain function from the fractal in case you want to adjust that Gaussian amount. So now we have a node where all we have to do is connect to our current distribution and to our position output. And it is creating two links to our position, and that's basically our fractal and also that z. So what I want to do to make this easier is, since this was connected to the z, which is null for the position, I'm going to connect that, instead of its own vector 3 input, just the one position vector 3. So that way we only needed to connect it to the position once. And now we have a node we can load in and use over and over for our zone. And then we have the ability to connect the gain and adjust it change the internal unit if we're switching from scenes. And I'm going to call this sphere zone. And then we can save out the metanode just by clicking save. And that'll take us to the folder we were using before. Call it sphere zone, save. And now we'll be able to load that in on another layer. So let's go to layer 2. But first we need to create the zone. So I'm going to select EcoZone 1, Control C copy, Control V paste, edit the material, EcoZone 2, change our color to make it stand out from the other one. We'll make it blue. And I just want to make sure, because I did make a copy, that it did not affect the current landscape connection. So we'll go into the first variable density, and we can see it's still set to Eco Zone 1. So I just wanted to make sure there was no conflict there. So now we can set up number 2, edit the function. We're going to load in a metanode, select our sphere zone, and what we can do, select our position dependency of EcoZone 2, the size of EcoZone 2, internal unit's already set, connect our current distribution to the bottom of the metanode, the number output to our current distribution, and the position to the position. And now what we can do is select zone 2, and I'm going to create a little bit of an intersection and change the size. And now we can open back up the material and repopulate layer 2 to just populate within zone 2. And now we can see that sort of control. So I think that's a pretty cool technique you can use to really pick out what it is you want to preview and work with within the scene. You can also use this as a subtraction. So if we wanted to use this zone to subtract rather than define what part of the ecosystem we want to see, we can go into our material, and we're going to go to layer 2, edit the density, and we're going to edit the metanode. In our blender, we're going to change the ratio, or publish the ratio, or sorry, the combination mode, not the ratio. And minimum is what we currently have. We're going to change it to subtract and repopulate. And now if you take a look, you can see that that area is no longer being populated along with the Gaussian. Now it does look a little different than it did before. The reason for that is we are also subtracting the black area and the lower number. So that is, in this case, looks like adding to the overall distribution. So that may not be the perfect setting for this. I'm going to go back into number 2, and we're just going to check and see how the max mode will work. What we may have to do is invert the fractal output by using the opposite filter. But it looks like, in this case, the max mode did not work as well. So let's go ahead and just figure this out really quick. We're going to edit this, go into the function, and I think the simplest way to do this is to first unpublish the combination mode. We're going to disconnect the input connection, and we're going to add in a constant number value of -1, and that is going to be what we're blending with. We're going to set it to the blend mode, and we're going to control the ratio with the filter. Repopulate. And now we can see that working for the most part. Although we may have a little bit of the Gaussian change, we can see how it is being subtracted. And it looks like these other instances that are showing up are part of the Gaussian from the first zone. So it does look like it worked. And now we can see that separation. So we can also subtract with that method. And basically what we did was a number output of -1 is absolutely no population. And then we're controlling the ratio and the blend between the current distribution and what we're controlling with the sphere zone and acting as the ratio. So basically, wherever the sphere is showing up is a value of -1. And that's a way we can subtract. That is also the exact same way you would remove that sharp pointy peak we had within the fractal. So you could go into the procedural terrain, edit its function, set up the exact same sort of a connection to the sphere that we just had for the subtraction as part of the altitude. And that way it'll subtract altitude from that area. Now you might need to play around with the gain setting a little more to adjust the Gaussian to get a nice blend so it doesn't just cut out a perfect sphere. But that also applies the same way. So this ends up being a pretty versatile connection. And just to show you how we can use this to add to the ecosystem, right now we don't have any population on layer 2 up here. So what I'm going to do is go into our material, go to the second layer, we're going to edit this, and we could publish this value as well if you wanted easy access to it. But what I'm going to do is set this value to 1. And now this is going to create the exact opposite. So we can take our zone 2. I'm going to move it into an area where there is no population. Go back into our landscape. And on layer 2, click populate. And now we've added to that. Now once again we have seen a slight reduction of the overall population, and that is because we are also using the negative value, and that has slightly changed the distribution, reducing the current population. In that case, what we might be able to do is go into the function and make that number a value of 0.5 instead of a full 1. And let's populate that. And that doesn't look like it has modified it too much. So we might need to just use a lower value because the output of the current fractal is going to affect how that blend is working. So you may need to play around with it a bit more.